Divorce if you don't respect my parents. Hearing the word divorce from Harold, I was thrilled and headed straight to the city hall. Now I can finally cut ties with Harold and his family. That's what I thought, but it wasn't that simple. My name is Nancy. I met Harold through a mutual friend and we got married. Due to a health issue Harold had, we couldn't have children. But I loved my job and wasn't confident about balancing work with raising kids, so I didn't mind. I thought it would be fine if we just lived a quiet life together. However, a family vacation changed everything, and I started to drift away from Harold. The idea of a family vacation was Harold's sudden suggestion. I got some extended time off. Want to go on a trip together, Nancy? A vacation? Sounds great. Let's do it. I used to travel solo when I was single. Sometimes I'd spontaneously go on a trip on my day off, and sometimes I'd travel abroad during my company's summer vacation. I was delighted when Harold proposed the trip, but what he said next made me go, seriously? I want to do something nice for my parents, so let's invite Mila and David. And if they're coming, we have to bring my sister Kayla and her son Leon. I hid my surprise, but deep down, I wasn't thrilled. To put it bluntly, Harold's parents don't have boundaries. They believe that once you're married, you should always listen to your in-laws. Just seeing my in-laws once a year is stressful enough for me because our views are so different. Then there's Kayla, Harold's even more selfish sister. She has a 2-year-old son, Leon, and apparently she had a massive fight with her husband and divorced him shortly after Leon was born. Given Kayla's assertiveness, I can easily picture her in that situation. A vacation with such in-laws, a sister-in-law, and a toddler? That's not the trip I had in mind. I wanted a trip just with Harold, but since I had already said yes, I couldn't back out. Moreover, Harold always treated my parents with the same respect. If Harold wanted to do something nice for his parents, I thought I should support him, so I agreed to the family trip. Little did I know, I deeply regret this decision. Both the in-laws and Kayla wanted to go on the trip but seemed too lazy to plan. Nancy's experienced with this, right? Why not leave it to her? With Kayla's comments, the planning was suddenly all on me. Planning a solo trip and a family trip with a child are entirely different. I don't have kids, so I have no idea about family-friendly spots. Every day, I was on my phone researching and consulting travel agencies to plan our trip. I tried discussing the trip itinerary with Harold since he wanted to honor his parents. But Harold simply said, I have no clue. You've traveled alone to many places, Nancy. I trust you with this. And put everything on me. It was frustrating, but I thought, all right, this is my one-time contribution to honoring his parents. So I finalized our travel plan. On the day of the trip, since I put a lot of thought into the itinerary, David and Mila and Kayla seemed to enjoy it. However, the trip was a continuous series of frustrations. Firstly, I couldn't enjoy any tourist spots. Kayla said, We're on vacation and I want a break from parenting once in a while. You don't have kids, Nancy. Why not gain some experience? And suddenly, I was in charge of Leon. I had almost no experience with kids, so just keeping up with Leon was overwhelming. Kayla, maybe being true to her word, didn't touch Leon at all during the trip. Apparently, Leon had a sensitivity to sunlight. At certain spots, I could only sit in the shade with him, unable to enjoy the attractions. Despite this, I was the designated driver for the entire trip. David, Mila, and Kayla all have their licenses and should be capable drivers, but none of them ever offered to take over. Even when I mentioned I'd appreciate a break, they'd brush it off saying they were too tired. Harold, who rarely drives, was no help. On top of that, I was footing all the bills. I assumed Harold, who brought up this honoring the parents trip, would handle the finances, but he said, "Sorry, I'm short on cash this month. Can you cover for now?" It seemed David, Mila, and Kayla just expected me to pay. Whenever I subtly tried to distance myself from the bill, they'd loudly call out, "Nancy, it's time to pay." I couldn't ignore them, so I ended up covering all the expenses. There was no way I was enjoying this trip. Though Harold and I had separate rooms from David and Mila and sister-in-law, at night I'd return to our room and unload my frustrations on him. "You wanted to honor your parents, but you haven't helped at all, Harold. You didn't think about the itinerary, you can't drive, and what do you mean you're out of money? Where did it go?" "Well, there was this limited edition shoe from when I was younger that got re-released. I just had to get it, and it drained my funds. Don't worry, I'll pay you back next paycheck." I don't get the fascination, but Harold has this hobby of collecting shoes. He owns several pairs of running shoes, but given Harold's hefty physique, I've never seen him wear them. They seem to be just for display. I always thought that as long as he enjoyed it, that was okay. However, coming on this trip under the guise of honoring his parents and then not having money was unbelievable. Naturally, I was livid. I gave Harold an earful, but he kept saying, "I'll pay you back on my next payday." Seeing no point in further complaining to a penniless Harold, I went to bed in exasperation. "I expect you to help with Leon tomorrow at least," I warned him. But the next day was no different. Leon was attached to Harold, but Mila wouldn't allow it. "It's obvious that women should care for children. On a family trip, it's only natural for the daughter-in-law, Nancy, to do so." Harold followed his mother's words over my request. I ended up taking care of Leon and, of course, handling the finances. For me, it was the worst trip ever. For David, Mila, and Kayla, it seemed to be the best. Once we returned home, I was so upset with Harold, tears streaming down my face. Unable to enjoy even one tourist spot, and exhausted from being forced to drive all the time, I criticized Harold for not helping me out. But Harold responded, "It's out of respect for my parents," and "This will be the last time we do this." He said that trying to soothe me. The last time. I believed those words and swore to myself that I would never go on another family trip. Our marital spat ended then, but perhaps I should have considered divorce at that moment. 6 months later, David, Mila, and Kayla suggested, "Let's go on another family trip." For some reason, Harold seemed to agree, saying, "Sure." I had no idea why he'd agree to it. Harold had clearly told me, "This trip will be the last." When he asked me again to plan another family trip, I was furious. "We are absolutely not going on another trip. I've had enough of family vacations. You said the last one was the final trip, didn't you?" "But it's to show appreciation to our parents," Harold argued. "You didn't do anything last time, Harold. And what about the money I paid that you still haven't paid back?" "Stop nagging. If you won't help, that's just divorce." Upon hearing the word divorce from Harold, I joyfully headed straight to the city hall. I hadn't been wanting a divorce all the time, but since that trip, I had been harboring ill feelings towards Harold. I quickly got Harold to sign the divorce papers, then immediately submitted them at the city hall. Returning home, I declared to Harold, leave. The house we lived in was bought with the money I'd saved before our marriage. Harold had no ownership, so I kicked him out right away and sent his belongings to his parents' place. I promptly had a locksmith change the front door lock and finally felt free. Mila called, angrily accusing me of suddenly divorcing and kicking Harold out, but I simply brushed her off. To me, Mila is now a stranger, so there's no need to be polite anymore. I was criticized for sending Harold's belongings with a COD charge, but I wondered why I should pay for the shipping of my divorced husband's stuff. I brushed off that comment as well. Mila's calls became so incessant that I blocked her number. Just when I thought I was finally free, Kayla showed up at my home within days of the divorce. When I saw Kayla on the doorbell camera, my initial reaction was, oh no. But she kept knocking, and I could see Leon pacing back and forth outside. I didn't want to be a bother to the neighbors, so I reluctantly let Kayla in. As I served her tea, she started speaking, tears in her eyes. It's really heartbreaking that Harold and Nancy are divorced. Leon had grown so fond of you. It's sad. What brings you here today? Well, I came because we need help planning a trip. Excuse me? I responded, my face twitching in disbelief, but Kayla continued with a sorrowful look. Neither my parents nor Harold nor I know much about planning trips. We had such a great time on the previous trip, so we were hoping Nancy could help with the planning again. Of course, we'd like you to come along. We'd want you to take care of Leon, and I assume you'll handle the expenses? Why should I plan your family trip, take care of Leon, and even pay for it? Because you're the daughter-in-law. We're divorced now. You and I are strangers. As I spoke bluntly, Kayla burst into tears. Then she called Mila, and soon enough, David, Mila, and Harold all arrived at my home. My ex-husband Harold and his family brazenly entered my home, creating chaos. It felt like a glaring mistake ever having a family with such inconsiderate people. After requesting to use the restroom, I secretly called the police. No matter how many times I pleaded with them to leave, they wouldn't budge. Returning from the restroom, I confronted them, revealing I'd called the authorities. Despite that, they wouldn't leave. They didn't seem to believe me until the police actually arrived, their shocked faces saying it all. Kayla was livid, snapping at me. Why are you being so disrespectful? Just for asking you to show some decency, you call the police on us? An officer intervened, asking, Are these people related to you? I clarified, no, it's my ex-husband and his family. After I explained the situation to the police, an officer gave me a sympathetic look and said, You've had a tough time. It truly was an exhausting ordeal. The police handled the disruptive family expertly, separating us and eventually escorting them out. As they departed, the officers warned that such irrational individuals might return. Wanting no further ties with this bizarre family, I handed my house over to an acquaintance and moved out. Just when I thought I'd successfully severed ties, Harold called me a few days later. At work, I ignored the persistent calls at first, but finally picked up. He sounded frantic, yelling, Why aren't you coming out of the house? I could break another window. The flower beds are ruined and the front door is covered in mud. It's all because you're hiding in there." I replied, puzzled, "What are you talking about?" "If you keep this up, things will get much worse. I know you're home. The lights are on." "I'm at work right now. Besides, that's not my house anymore." "Huh?" A puzzled tone echoed from the phone. From a distance, I could hear police sirens. It seemed Harold accidentally forgot to hang up, and from the other end of the line, a distinct voice could be heard. It was the voice of my brother. My brother served in the Marines, and he's quite the robust man. To Harold's surprise, it wasn't me but my brother on the scene. My brother warned him, "The police are on their way, stay put." A startled yelp, "Eek!" came from Harold in response. My brother confiscated Harold's phone and explained the situation to me. Harold and his family had targeted the house I used to live in, which my brother now occupied. Without warning, they broke windows and caused an uproar. I had warned my brother about the possibility of Harold and his family showing up. Still, he decided to live in that house, since it was conveniently close to his workplace. Aware of the potential threat, he installed security cameras everywhere. As a result, all the misconduct by Harold and his family was captured on camera. Instead of merely hiding inside, my brother called the police and waited for their arrival. The police arrested Harold and his family, primarily for the property damage they caused. I also had an audio recording of Harold threatening me, which I used to press charges for intimidation. My brother and I were puzzled. Why would a mere family trip lead to such chaos? The police investigation revealed a startling reason. Apparently, after divorcing me, Harold had quit his job. He mistakenly thought that moving back to his parents' home would mean not having to pay living expenses. So he left his job, and Kayla wasn't working either, citing childcare challenges. It seemed that supporting 4 adults and a child on a pension was too much for them. So Harold and his family seemingly tried to consider me as part of their family to demand money. They possibly thought that if they went on a family trip, my feelings for Harold would rekindle, and I might consider remarrying him. Such a bizarre reason left both my brother and me stunned. I decided that if I continued to deal with this family, things might spiral out of control. So I consulted with a lawyer and obtained a restraining order against all members of Harold's family. Later, Harold's family received a sentence with probation. Despite this, Harold sent me an email updating me about his situation. He's managed to find another job, but due to his probationary period, he seems to be working at a place that pays significantly less. All their savings, which were supposed to go to me and my brother for damages and emotional distress, were gone. The money Harold worked so hard to earn was mostly taken away by Kayla, claiming it's for their son Leon, and his in-laws took a significant portion as their share for living expenses. He even had to sell most of his favorite premium brand shoes, indicating his tight financial situation. Harold wrote about realizing the value of the life he once had with me, and even expressed a desire to rebuild our marital relationship. However, I blocked his emails. Since then, I've been unaware of any updates from that family. The family brought this all on themselves, and I had no sympathy for them. My brother still lives in that house, and since then, Harold and his family have never returned, living their lives in peace elsewhere. As for me, I'm relishing my independent and free life. I've reignited my passion for solo travel. Every day, I'm filled with excitement, pondering which country to visit next.